This is another episode of Down the Donut Hole podcast. And today, we're going to talk about possible ways to not get too nervous about the news.
What? What'd you hear in the news? What's going on?
Are you listening to your playlists in the van and you're never turning to the news? Is this right?
No, wait, what's happening? First, I want to know what's happening.
It's not War of the Worlds.
Oh, okay.
It's not War of the Worlds.
It's worse.
Is it not?
I think we do have visitors from other planets. I mean, that whole drone thing around Christmas time.
I forgot about that.
Oh, now you're nervous.
I was very upset about that, and then I forgot. I forgot I was upset about it, and then there was something else I was upset about. All right, I'm going to be quiet now. I'm going to drink my coffee. Sorry.
How many cups is that now?
I don't know, 17, 18? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. The down the donut hole coffee supply is dwindling quickly.
And you are wrong. It's not helping me relax at all.
We will talk about ways to relax, and some of it seems kind of obvious. If you are a doom scroller, stop doom scrolling. That's hard to say. Say it 5 times fast. Just try not to consume as much of it. Yes, we all have to stay informed. We are informed. We have very strong opinions about what we're hearing, what we're seeing. But freaking out or feeling like you're going to have a heart attack is not a solution. The solution is to modulate your own response to what you're seeing so that you can think clearly, you can respond in an informed way by consuming both sides of the issue in a modest, reasonable amount.
This, I'm assuming, is what you're telling yourself.
I tell myself that. I have to tell myself that.
Well, I just want to say now I feel a little embarrassed by how I started the episode today, so I apologize. I should have probably listened to what you had to say first.
Well, laughing is good medicine.
Oh, yeah, I was joking. Sorry. Oops.
No, it's true. We laugh a lot, and I think if you've consumed any of our other donut holes, that you will notice that we try to take a more wide perspective on what's happening in the news. We try to correlate it with things that are culturally informed, so that if you see something that just seems like it's way out of control, bringing it back down, not engaging to the place where we are actually escalating those behaviors that we would prefer to modulate. It's the same in interpersonal relationships. One person says something that's enraging. The other person reacts with an enraged comment, then the whole thing just begins to spiral out of control. Where if at least one of 2 or 3, however many people are involved in an interpersonal conflict, if you can step back, listen for a few minutes, listen to what's being said, take in, acknowledge what you understand is valid points, and then if you can control yourself, it's highly likely that the other combatants will bring the temperature down. And if you've given them acknowledgement, you've given them a chance to give their opinion, and then hopefully you can ask for them to listen to what you have to say.
I have a question about something.
Sure.
You said that you just said you were talking about something being, talk about both sides of the issue.
Yes.
Do you think there are more sides than just 2?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Needs to be.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's because we've been kind of programmed to think there is just A and B choices?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And when you listen to both sides, and if you are open-minded about a third perspective, maybe a perspective that you and your opposite can arrive at together. In the past, we've talked about 3 being the magic number because 2 opposing sides, I can't speak today.
Calm down. Just calm down.
It's the news.
Get all worked up.
It's got her all riled up.
Did you hear this?
Why do you think I
And
need
also
to
because
calm
we eat
down?
so many donut holes, it may be too much sugar.
I know.
Yeah, maybe that. Probably that.
Cup 19, by the way, for the listeners.
We should have one of those little counters up that people can, every time you get another cup.
So there should be
A way to synthesize ideas.
So polarization is between two poles, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why we're polarized, because we only have two poles, and we need more than one and two poles.
Yes.
Because then we just default to thinking there's a right and a wrong instead of really kind of trying to solve any kind of issue. And that's true in politics and in personal lives and in your profession and all that stuff. I think that applies across the board. So people don't think you're just only talking about politics, but I think politics is important because it affects not just your own household, but the world,
Absolutely. And especially, I think, if you're talking politics or you're talking about anything, when an individual, when your worldview is very extreme and very rigid, and you have come to believe that conceding any, space to anyone else to have an opinion is you losing. You're a loser if you concede or if you negotiate. And I think we've kind of come to that place in this country where nobody wants to give an inch. But the real hero in these stories is the person that can say, okay, I see this, that while this is absolutely the truth, it is not an absolute truth. So it's fair to say that there are other elements at play in here. And listening to a variety of perspectives will bring you to a much more accurate read on what the situation really is, and it'll help you arrive at a methodology to address the valid issues that are coming from the two polar sides. So we can do that if we develop that as a mindset within ourselves, and we communicate that to people that maybe we've been encouraging and keeping that flame turned up. If we share an opinion on something and I get all upset about something and I call you up on the telephone and I say, hey, you know what I just read? I saw this, and you're all nervous about it. The fact is, you are keeping each other in a state of anxiety the whole time. And there are real health consequences from doing that. What happens, Dave, what happens in your body when you're all crazy? Not you specifically, when a person
fight or flight response is the main thing.
What is that?
The fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically part of being a human, and any animal really. It's you're direct coded around your reasonable thinking. Your frontal cortex, for instance, is never involved in the fight or flight response. You just, oh my gosh, this seems dangerous to me, and I have to react quickly and in a very large way to this stimulus. And that's the information. We can't forget too that the news media in this country, especially, is big business, and the style at which they put this information out on the news every day is definitely, there's a big factor involved in there in terms of making it seem more dramatic than it needs to be.
And that's to sell papers or to get eyeballs on the newscast. So you make things seem extreme. I don't know, it seems off topic, but it isn't. There's so much information out there. That media is just a bombardment on people all the time. And I noticed that with some of the things my grandchildren consume and their friends consume, that the people on YouTube and places like that are literally screaming. The temperature is turned way up all the time. And the kids are wrapped. It's like a train wreck, It seems like an emergency. It seems like things are through the roof. And sometimes I wonder if, when in the absence of that, when they're not watching that show, do things seem boring and dull because they've consumed so much of that high pressure stuff. And now the kids, there's limits on what they can view of that sort of thing. But I'm just surprised that those shows are as popular as they are.
Well, it's an interesting condition to get people emotionally riled up so that they're not able to think clearly, and then they feel powerless, and that's why they do some of the things they do, like throw paint on
The Mona Lisa.
yeah, and like throw tomatoes at a delivery truck, for example, stuff like that. It's like you're. Is it a feeling of powerlessness?
I think probably.
Have you had tomatoes thrown at your truck?
No, I threw. Never mind.
No, but
It was Ted.
You've heard
They don't
stories.
Dare. They don't dare because you'll throw them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think that people do feel generally powerless. I think part of what we're seeing and hearing is this backlash against a government that for a lot of people it hasn't worked. They see other people seemingly prosperous and federal funds being spent here and there, and they feel like they didn't get an invite to the party.
I would argue that that's not I certainly don't believe, if you look at history, I don't think that's a current or a recent phenomenon, is it?
No, absolutely not.
And I think maybe that adds to the anxiety. We think these are the worst times ever, but we have indoor plumbing, indoor heating, television, internet, health care to some, we have better health care than they probably did when the barber would saw your arms and legs off,
After you got done pulling your teeth and cutting your hair.
Yeah.
Cool, man. One-stop shopping.
but
What's wrong with that?
But I think if you're not a student of history, you think that you live in the worst era ever. But I think that's how you get people to vote for you, if you can convince them of that. And also, I don't think that a response to powerlessness is cruelty. I don't think that ever works. You can't win an argument with cruelty because, like that was part of my wedding vows, I think. Anyway,
that's
sorry.
unique. Is there video of
20. Cut 20. I'll shut up now.
No, well, as they say, force will be met with force. And that isn't just, I don't believe, among governments or societies. That's met interpersonally, too. And so a fear response or an angry response is always going to be more than it needs to be to solve the problem. When you watch the news at night and you see the documentation of local events, conflicts between people, and you find out when it's all said and done that a murder happened because they couldn't agree on some silly thing, who was going to go pay for the pizza, or something that just blossomed out of control. And so I think as individuals, if we say, okay, there's a lot that I feel I can't affect right now, that I can't handle right now, I think maybe look inward and say, okay, what can I do to turn that feeling of powerlessness, of fear, of all of those negative emotions, what can I do to reduce that within myself? And how can I help my kids or my friend to do the same? And I think there are steps. I know there are steps that each person can take. Number one, if you can identify right in your own sphere of influence something that gets on your nerves and that you react to sharply when...
Wait, why are you looking at me when you say that?
I don't mean anything
Okay.
by it. I just
Sorry.
need a focal point to blab.
Okay.
If you can, take steps to address small things. This seems silly, but it really isn't in the grand scheme of things. When you come in the door, you trip over all your kids' shoes and, a basketball and, a few other things, a tennis racket or something. Everybody comes in, throws those down. Their book bags are all thrown right there. And you have to climb over Mount Everest to get in the room. And you've said many, many times, hey, guys, I don't want you to leave these here like this. At least shove them out of the way so that nobody gets hurt, nobody falls down the stairs or, whatever it is. And it's irksome. So this has gone on for a long time. It makes you angrier and angrier, especially if you're having come from a situation that you also don't feel you have control over at your job or whatever. And so maybe this weekend, get a box to put that stuff in. Put up some hooks. It's going to take you an hour. Maybe spend $20. I don't know what it costs for hooks. But fix it. And then you can enforce it. Hey, guys, this stuff is still in the way. I'm going to put it up. You will be fined if I see this here again. All right, it's a small thing. But by the time you come in from work and you walk over to the kitchen or whatever to get supper, you've taken the temperature down a notch because it didn't feel like the kids were defying an order from you. You weren't climbing over things. You could find your slippers easily because there isn't 6 pairs of kid shoes on top of them. And so now it might be just a little better for you right now, when it's time to get supper for a bunch of kids and, you're on a time frame because so-and-so has practice and, you're giving rides to kids, whatever it is. But you've turned the temperature down just a notch.
And I think that's a good point. That reminds me of something that's happened to me on occasion.
Okay.
Is when I'll use your example. So you have all those like the tennis racket and the shoes and the basketball, and you're probably like upset about that, about tripping over them and everything. And you're probably maybe you're thinking about doing what you just said. It's like making hooks or some place to store those or whatever, right? But then you don't do it, and you're just kind of stewing about it. And I think this has happened to me, where there will be a point where you'll forget what happened to cause you to feel that way, and you'll only have that anxiety, and you won't even remember why. It'll just be, there's something that really bothered me today, and does that make sense at all?
Yeah.
So that's why it's good advice what you just said, because if you take care of that, you have it's not really a big thing. No, you've gotten rid of that little. It's like having a little thorn in your foot or something.
It's like a pilot light,
That's what I said. Like I said, it's like a pilot light. Yes.
It's absolutely like a pilot light because it's on. It's always on, and it makes it easier to turn up the flame, to get it to ignite, and if you do it systematically, that little example, the shoes by the door, the tennis rackets, the basketball, all the other junk, it makes you have this feeling like the kids aren't listening to you. They're not respecting your authority. When, unless you've put in mechanisms for that to be handled in the way you say, and then, you are going to have to take a tennis racket away once in a while. But usually it's only once. This sounds really cruel, but this is what I did. We had 5 kids, and I would say a couple of times before Dave got back from work, I'd say, hey guys, I want all this stuff picked up. We always lived in a small house. And come on, I want all of this out of here. Get your books, get your coats, get all of this stuff put away. And there were hooks and there were things like that. They didn't do it. And I would say, all right. I'd tell them the second time, I go, hey. The third time, I'd come in with a bag. Let's put it in here. And I'd just start picking it up. I wouldn't even have to say anything. Start picking up the stuff, put it in the bag. What are you doing? What are you doing? Quit doing it. No. I told you, I gave you 2 warnings. This stuff has to be picked up. Now, I'll give it back to you, but it's going to cost you $0.25 per item. You redeem it from the impound, really. I did it twice. And then all I had to do is pick up the bag, the collection bag, pick it up and walk into the room, and you should have seen people diving to pick things up.
You had kind of a racket going there.
It didn't make
no
me.
pun intended.
I would put the money, I had a little fun for if we went on a vacation or a trip or something, and all the impound money went into that, so I could, kind of give it back to them. And
so
they could redeem each other's, but all I had to do is grab the bag.
Honestly, were you hoping they didn't pick up their stuff so you could
make
some money?
No. We did the same thing on trips, which is interesting. And
what I was trying to say was that you have the racket that you had going was the fact that you only paid 10 cents for that item at the thrift store.
Probably.
So you
Hey,
were making 15 cents, right?
yeah. Again, it went into the fun. Same on vacations. We'd give the kids, didn't we? It worked great. Give them a roll of quarters, a $10 roll of quarters, and if they were acting up in the car, I mean, picture a trip to Florida, a car trip to Florida with 5 kids, 4 at the time, 4 kids, and if they're fighting and anything like that, that's really irksome. We would take frequent breaks so that the kids, you had an opportunity for the kids to blow off steam. If they continued, you just got back from a rest stop and a little break, and then they're going back to fighting, you can encourage them to go to sleep. You can play soft music. Those are 2 mechanisms for bringing the temperature down. Or you can say, hey, the next time you do that, the next time you stab your sister with your Barbie's feet, I'm taking your Barbie from you, and you will be fined a quarter. Well, and the quarter, the idea with the roll of quarters was, this is your spending money when you get down there. Now, this is years ago. So a $10 roll of quarters was quite a lot of money for a little kid back then. And, but we'd confiscate it. And then, of course they're going to get it back because, wherever you go, oh, I want this, I want that, and it gets filtered back to the kid. But it was an immediate consequence, and they could see their spending money going down. There were visuals there that they could refer to, and say, hey, I need to throttle back a little bit. And so we enjoyed the trips that we took with the kids. And that mechanism worked. They each had a bag of snacks. They didn't have to ask for it. They could share. They could trade. And so those kinds of things worked out. So we got to go on a lot of adventures with the kids that were pleasant for the most part. There were moments, I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't, because there was. If we take that and we use that same kind of thought process with how we're dealing in these times that are highly fraught, very nerve-wracking, if we say, okay, let me figure out what are they saying? The opinion that you dislike the most, what are they trying to say? How valid is it? Have they shown us concrete proof of what they're saying? I want to see what is the evidence for what you're saying. Because the danger here is if we get so entrenched in camps, it's like the car trips with the kids. So-and-so says that the other one did this or did that, or she stole my M&Ms or whatever. If you believe one kid over the other kid, then you're not being a fair parent. And that's kind of how we're acting. Like we believe one side, not the other, and we're not saying, well, let me understand. Help me understand.
If I understand what you're saying, this is sort of the total load theory is what you're talking about. Because these are, what you're describing are very common sort of daily stressors that you really can't ever get away from. And then you add to that all this news that is presented in a fairly scary way or overly urgent or overly dramatic, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, and started in terms of trying to not be so nervous about everything in general.
So you take care of what you can take care of easily first. Do that first.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of level that off, and then layer by layer, you can begin to look for things.
And I think you also have to realize that, at least here in the States, that the news is propaganda and emotional propaganda.
To some extent, I think that's absolutely true.
Remember how we used to have, I like the Sunday morning, kind of the news magazine show.
Oh, yeah, that was CBS.
Yeah.
That was very laid back.
Yeah, right. So I miss genuine human interest stories where they're not, where I have a big issue with people being manipulated in any way or bullied or whatever. And so I feel like a lot of the human interest stories today are not about human interest and about emotional manipulation for some agenda. And when you recognize that it disconnects you from the emotional manipulation. I think some of the stories you see and hear. That's what I did. I just disconnect myself from that because I know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're trying to push me to one side of an issue, and they'll say things that are taken out of context. So what I do, if I hear something repeated, a phrase repeated over all these different news organizations and whatever, right? I want to see the full context of that quote.
Yes. Trace
So-
it
Have-
back a little.
take-
I don't know. I mean, the use of the word propaganda is probably a bit harsh. I think, and I don't think that's their primary goal,
No.
is to mislead people. It's just that it's big business, like I said earlier. I
And
mean,
they have to go with their
it's
advertisers and their
sensationalize
ownership.
it. Yeah, they're sensationalizing it for profit because people, oh, you got to check this out. You see what they're saying now. And this is not new. I think it was a famous journalist, Walter Winchell. I think that they kind of blame him for starting all of that.
He loved the rumors, the gossip mongering.
Exactly, yeah.
And he could sell papers because everybody wanted to know the dirt. You know, Bridgerton is a lot like that. You have the main character
Isn't
there.
that the
who's
naked show?
Who's writing. Well, it's got some spice in it. Yes, it does. It has the main character is a writer. I don't know. If it does.
I don't know how you know
I
this. You
can't
must be
picture
watching
being
this
a
when I'm not
Bridgerton.
around.
I
Yeah.
know that show. Yes, that's all I'll say. I know the show.
So that means you had a very close girlfriend. Anyway, the writer, she puts out the gossip and everybody runs to it. People like scandal. That's why we like the Hollywood stories. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to go for a haircut. Mom would have my hair curled or something. And you'd sit under the hair dryers, and then it was like a hood. You looked like something from outer space, a hood. But they always had a bunch of movie magazines there about all the stuff about the stars. And I remember sitting there as just this little kid, reading those, and I would kind of have an idea who it was. I recognized maybe the Disney people, and there would be some thing in there about them, and I think, oh my goodness, and so that was all available, and that was a long time ago. So this really isn't anything new, but I think the level of how much we're bombarded by that is a new thing.
Well,
This barrier aggression thing too.
Oh, yeah. Well, that should probably be a totally different show, possibly. But it is related for sure.
Just
yeah,
quick.
so yeah, she had blonde hair and she would write stories, and then she wrote a story about her family, or her friend's family,
Yeah.
and then she found out, and then they had a row, and then they broke up as friends and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen the show. Yeah, Bridgerton. Yeah.
I am shocked.
And then
I would not picture you the demographic.
To have a girlfriend?
No, to be watching Bridgerton.
Because, yeah, it was my
enough that you
ex-girlfriend
can
that-
enough
Yeah.
that you
But it
can
was-
reach sight.
She had
what
me
it was.
watch that, and it was a good show. I liked it.
All right, it was well written and it is captivating. I will say.
But back to about the kind of the feeling of I guess the feeling of powerlessness with
Yes.
the bombardment of the media and the messages. Just like you say, take a break and realize that maybe if someone, and not just in media but in your own life, if someone's being cruel to you or manipulative, if it's something that's creating negative emotions, maybe kind of be aware of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if it's somebody you really like and adore or something, and they're making you feel in a negative way, something bad about yourself, kind of be like, okay, you feel powerlessness, right? But maybe stop and empower yourself.
Yeah.
Take control of it. Be like,
how
this
would
is
you
what's
do
happening.
it? How would you do it? If someone was saying something to you that you could feel was making you feel horrible, what's something you might say?
I hate you. See,
And that'll
that's
help.
my
Oh,
point.
boy.
See, that's my point. What is their reaction going to be if I say that?
I think something that helps these days is to say, not angrily or something, but just say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me where you saw that. And I'd like to check that out.
Yeah.
You meaning if it's something in the news that's got somebody all torqued up, to say, where did you see that? Let me. I wonder.
There's a recent good example about the news that there was an executive order to completely shut down the Department of Education. And of course, that's a polarized response to that, I'm sure. But there is one consideration, is the fact that on the world scene, we are judged as a country, not as individual states. So this is my opinion, of course. It does seem like there is some function for an education department at the federal level.
To coordinate what the states are doing to make sure that there's a fairly level playing field, so it isn't just the children in urban areas that are well educated, or maybe the reverse. Maybe it isn't just the kids in the rural schools that are getting a classic education, and so that we can kind of make sure that it's spread out across the United States. So if we are being judged, and we know we are, because I think our ranking, by the way, on that subject, I think on the world stage, we're in the 30s.
Boy, we sure rank.
We are not in the top few in terms of education.
Right. So you would need some coordination just logically between all the states to make us show up better on the world stage.
There's work
Ranking.
that needs to
point.
be done.
How do we, if the rest of the world is, they judge their quality of education as a country, how are we going to do it if it's split up with
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. So
That's it.
is it
Rich
maybe the
states-
Department of Education has been too fat, like a lot of government? It's true.
I agree
But
with that.
balanced,
I think we all agree.
something balanced instead of saying, "Oh, we won't have it at all," versus trying to understand what we do need.
and how united should the states be?
They don't seem very, do they?
Oh, not anymore. And that is frightening.
And that doesn't mean
It is frightening.
That doesn't mean conformity or any of it, but united in like how do we deal with things?
Well, I think
it's weird.
I think if we sort of put out the general guideline, this is what you have to teach. And to get a driver's license, for instance, it's pretty standardized what you need to know to be able to get a license to drive a car. And I think with education, and I mean, this is what we're doing right now is an example of a very hot button issue on the national stage right now, that if we sit back and we talk about it and we don't get polarized about it, yeah, but they're spending too much money on this and too much money on that and too much focus on things and pulling books out of the library that talk about other issues. I think we have to understand that knowledge is power. And when we have our students, we want them to perform at a very top level. And so what do we need to have them know?
That is an incredible point, because when you think about it, the ability, like the ability to be able to read, way back when, that was like something that was not given. Teaching someone to read, that was deprived. People were deprived of that.
Yes.
For a reason.
Yes.
To make them powerless.
It kept them powerless.
And that's part of what I mean when I talk about the feeling of powerlessness people have. It doesn't just mean for themselves. I think a lot of people are genuinely compassionate, and the powerlessness and anxiety they feel is for those who are truly powerless.
I think
Cup 23.
No, I think that they.
Hopefully you switched to decaf. But no.
Yeah, we should have switched them a long time ago.
So how do you come down from all that, though? Now, how do you do that? How do you decaffeinate yourself emotionally?
That's a great way to put it, because everybody knows that feeling of jitteriness. And I think we have that without the coffee.
He's also eating the coffee donut holes.
Just dry. Just eating the coffee dry now. I need more.
I think just take control of what you can take control of. Listen with an open mind. Make sure that you are not allowing yourself to get sucked into the polarization. You are not a member of a club. You are not a member of a cult. I think
You are the human race, though.
I think
The human race and Earth.
well, no, that's the big club, but the way it is now with the political parties and that sort of thing, it's like you can't reach across the aisle. The thing that gets me is if you know someone, and they might be on the news, and you hear them spewing something that you absolutely cannot endorse. But if you knew them as a person, and you had a cup of coffee and a pile of donut holes with them, you might find that they're a lovely person. And they might be someone that, apart from those political ideologies, in this time frame, and apart from them, you might like them a lot.
And we have to face it that, I don't really like to engage in politics too much because I'm already upset about my own personal life. But then you have to stop and realize that you can't avoid it. You can't avoid politics because these are decisions being made that affect all of us.
Yes. I think slowing it down. I think right now, if the pace of all of this,
do you think that's part of the issue? Is that
absolutely.
There's stuff that is being fed to us so quickly that you can't stop to process what's...
I think that's 90% of the problem. I think that there's so much from so many different directions. We have education, we have USAID, we have the Ukraine problem.
Is there a deliberate
Now we have all of these people getting fired, and it's just steamrolling people. And so people who already felt like the processes of government were not in their favor, and that they were on the outside looking in, whether it's because they are more sympathetic to one viewpoint than another. Now the pace of this has pretty much everybody upset. Some people are afraid to say that they're upset about it.
How do you keep that from escalating into hatred and then violence?
That's the problem. And that's why it is important to take control of what you can, to be reasonable about it. Don't join the screaming match because that just further polarizes things. But if you can say, hey, I lean toward this belief and I accept what so-and-so is saying, but I do require proof. Show me proof. Because I think there's two words that really have been the core of everything we've been able to be together here in this country. And those two words are due process. Show me. Let me see the evidence. Let's decide this based on the evidence.
Well, that is happening because some of it is in the courts right now. But that's not clearly covered, I don't think. It's not made clear so that people react immediately to the initial act. In this case, we're referencing the executive order, without them realizing fully that, it's not necessarily going to end up that way because the court has the right to look at that. And that's maybe another thing that they could do better would be to follow up those stories a little bit better.
And make sure
say, well, okay, this sounds extreme, but now it goes to the courts and then possibly they'll decide that this is the only Congress can make this kind of a decree, and then it's back to Congress and all that. So this is not something that's going to be implemented instantly and will stick that way. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
But if people are locked out, if your brother or sister or you are locked out of your office, you're not sure when your next paycheck is coming, you got a huge mortgage and all of this stuff, and all of this, it's not just the education thing, it's all of these things that are happening so fast. Ramp up that feeling of powerlessness that you're talking about, Des. And I think then the anxiety level, the collective anxiety level, just torques up. And my concern with all of that is there will be a breaking point and people will begin to rebel in ways that are really out of control. And then if we get some executive order where it's martial law or it's this or that, because this is a widespread problem, because now we're seeing it's nationwide. There's no area of this country that isn't having people at town halls screaming their head off and this and that. And we can't let it get to the place.
And it's not just us either. Mm-mm. The rest of the world has. And it's always been that way. I think that we're just, as citizens, we have more access to information than I believe we probably used to. And
Well, it's in your hand. It's in your pocket or your purse at all hours
not
of
in
the day.
my purse. What are you talking about?
But you've
That
always,
cute little pink bag.
you've always said, and it's true, to consume a wide range of news sources,
Yes.
especially out of the country.
And not just
So
the
you get a
candy.
better
Just don't
perspective.
consume candy that you like the flavor of.
Well, that's kind of
Or
what
coffee
it
and
is.
donut holes.
Yeah, kind of what it is, metaphorically.
Yeah. No, the truth is it is a problem. I'm not pretending that there aren't real issues right now. They are grinding through the courts. We need to insist that our elected officials listen, that they are not so polarized in their viewpoint that they're closed off.
But
They have to have an open mind. Everyone needs, all of us individually, open mind, listen to what the other side is saying, process it, and come up with a middle of the road solution. That's the formula.
listen to
That's
what
how we
the
get
other
it.
sides.
Well, that's it.
There's
Right now,
we
we
need
can't
more
pretend.
people, and that's the thing. It's like, and this is, see, I know we talked about how to relax and stuff, and it seems like we're not relaxing the more we talk about it.
No, it's
But
true.
that's the thing, is it's okay to talk about these things and have passion about them because they're important topics and issues and things. That is also a way you can relax yourself by discussing things rather than internalizing them. I think a lot of anxiety comes from people being afraid to talk about stuff,
Right.
and not just how people will react to them, but how they might not be able to control their own emotions and stuff. And so people have an anxiety about talking about things.
It's
and that
how
just
you
it
talk
snowballs.
about it. It's don't keep it inside, but also don't yell about it. It's about everybody coming to the table in a reasonable fashion. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever is going to make you feel better. Talk about how you feel, because a lot of households are torn apart by allegiance to one ideology over the other. And if both sides can come up with a roadmap, let's bring the temperature down right here, right now in our household, and insist that we share this method of conflict resolution with our friends.
And understand that you have a right to your opinion, to speak about how you feel and what you think about things, not just as an American citizen or a citizen, but as a human being. You have a right, I think a natural right, to be able to express how you feel, how you think, what you fear, what you're concerned about.
But you also have an obligation to listen, and that's the part we forgot to write down. You have the right to speak and the obligation to listen.
I think that's fair. That's fair, right?
That's balanced.
That's fair.
And what we've been talking about, what we try all the time to talk about in the Down the Donut Hole podcast, is how to achieve some level of balance. Look at things around you that are fun. Take little mechanisms to reduce your own anxiety.
Do you think that's why like meditation and stuff is good?
I do.
Absolutely.
When we will talk more about ways that you can do that for yourself to bring the temperature down, to make you feel better, to make you feel well. We are coming up on the last minute of our time. I want to thank you again for joining us. We hope that some of our little coffee table conversations help you to make you feel less alone, maybe more empowered to take control of the things that you can control right now easily in your life. Be kind to each other, because it is scary times. Listen to each other and try to come up with a reasonable solution to move forward together. That's the big word.
But
Well
remember,
said.
when you go to the barber, you're there to get your hair cut today. So we've progressed quite a bit.
Yeah, it isn't healthcare of old. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Count your blessings. There are many.
See you next time.